British scientists are yet to determine the precise source of nerve agent used to poison double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter. The head of the military facility, who is working on the samples collected from the scene, has said that the scientists are unable to confirm whether the nerve agent Novichok used in Salisbury attack was made in Russia. Reacting to the new revelations, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that London will have to apologize to Russia for its allegation. He said, and I quote, "For us, the situation was appalling from the very beginning, and now confirmations is gradually starting to come in that the insane accusations made by the British side a few hours after the assassination attempt on double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter are baseless and groundless." The Global Chemical Weapons Watchdog, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, will hold a special session today to discuss the Salisbury attack. The session is being held at the request of Russia. However, the United Kingdom has called Russia's request for the meeting a diversionary tactic to undermine an investigation. Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that the Global Chemical Weapons Watchdog would help to defuse a major diplomatic row triggered by the Salisbury attack. During a press conference in Ankara, Putin said that Moscow has raised questions for discussion and hoped that after the meet, a final line on what has happened will be drawn. Dutch lawyer Alex van der Zwaan has become the first person to be sentenced in Robert Muller's investigation. He was sentenced to jail for 30 days for lying to FBI agents last year. He lied about communication with Gates and a Ukrainian who worked for Manafort during the 2016 presidential polls. A woman opened fire at the YouTube headquarters in Northern California, wounding at least 3 people. One of the victims, a 36-year-old man, is said to be in critical condition while another is serious. The female shooter later died due to self-inflicting wounds. The move behind the attack is still unknown. U.S. President Donald Trump wants to deploy U.S. military forces to stop illegal immigrants at the border with Mexico. His comment comes after he threatened to halt U.S. foreign aid to Honduras and other countries unless they stopped a caravan of migrants headed to the U.S. He said he would discuss the idea soon with his Defense Secretary James Mattis. Teachers in U.S. state of Oklahoma walked out for a second day, closing schools in the state's 2 biggest cities. The teachers are demanding higher state spending on public education. The walkout reflected rising discontent amid years of sluggish or declining public school spending in Oklahoma, which ranked 48th in average teacher salaries in 2016. Migrants in southern Mexico are shaking off a planned order from President Donald Trump to militarize U.S.-Mexico border. Some 1,200 migrants are currently in the Oaxacan town of Matias Romero, where the Mexican government says they are undergoing an administrative procedure. During his visit to Ankara, Russian President Vladimir Putin said that a contract to supply Russians S-400 missile systems to Turkey is a priority in military cooperation between the 2 nations. Russia will supply Turkey with 4 divisions of S-400 surface-to-air missile divisions for $2.5 billion under a deal. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin attended a groundbreaking ceremony for Turkey's first nuclear power plant. A ceremony in Ankara commenced the construction of the $20 billion Akkuyu power station in the southern province of Mersin. The plant will be built by Russian state nuclear energy agency Rosatom. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani is in Ankara, where he will meet Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan and Russian President Vladimir Putin for a summit on Syria. The meeting brings together the 2 major allies of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, Iran and Russia, with one of his strongest opponents, Turkey. As Yemen crisis enters the fourth year, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and Yemen's foreign minister call for an end to the conflict between the warring factions. High child mortality and severe malnutrition plague Yemen as humanitarian crisis worsens in the country. More than 10,000 people have been killed since 2015. Libya's internationally recognized government has launched a military operation against remnants of the Islamic State group. Local forces aligned with the government of National Accord ousted Islamic State from its stronghold in the city of Sirte in late 2016. But Libyan officials believe that the group has retained a presence in western Libya. A Palestinian man was killed by Israeli gunfire in Gaza on Tuesday, raising the death toll from clashes along the border to 17,000. So Palestinians began a 6-week-long protest last week along the fenced border of the Israeli blockaded Gaza Strip. They are pressing for a right of return for refugees to the villages and towns where their families lived before 1948. Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman warned Palestinians that any protest on the Israel-Gaza border would be met with force. At least 16 people were killed last week after protests erupted in Israel-Gaza border. London Mayor's office has condemned the violent scourge on the city's streets after another weekend of bloodshed. In the latest bloodshed, a 17-year-old girl died after she was found with gunshot wounds in Tottenham, North London. According to new statistics, London police investigated more murders than New York over the last 2 months. German prosecutors has filed a request to a regional court for the extradition of former Catalan President Carles Puigdemont to Spain. The move is a further blow to Puigdemont, who has been held in prison in the northern German city of Neumünster. Puigdemont faces charges of rebellion in Spain over the region's campaign for independence. British opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn said there was no place for anti-Semitism in his party. His comment comes after he faced criticism for attending a Passover event with a left-wing Jewish group that has called for the destruction of Israel. Corbyn said that the Labour would investigate any cases of suspected racism. "35 people were injured after 2 underground trains collided in the western German city of Duisburg. Ambulances, fire engines and an air rescue helicopter descended on the scene to treat the injured. 2 of the victims are said to be in critical condition. Air France unions have called for a strike over pay. Hundreds of passengers found themselves stuck in Paris en route to other French or European cities on short to medium haul flights. Air France employees are demanding a 6% salary increase to keep up with inflation. Pilots want an additional increase of 4.7%, stating the demands of their working conditions. 4 main rail unions in France have called for 2 days of strikes every 5 days for the next 3 months. The strikes are against proposed employment reforms by the government of President Emmanuel Macron. Union action caused several disruptions in the country on Monday. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi called on all parties to resolve Korean Peninsula nuclear issue through dialogue. Wang said that all parties should remain rational and eliminate interference with this issue. Wang said China firmly supports the improvement of relations between North and South Korea and expects positive results of the meeting between the two heads of state. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met his North Korean counterpart Ryong-ho on Tuesday. The two leaders unanimously agreed that diplomatic departments both nations should deepen exchanges at all levels. Wang appreciated North Korea's stance on denuclearization of the Korean peninsula and praises its efforts to ease the tension in the peninsula. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Zimbabwean counterpart Emmerson Mnangagwa on Tuesday agreed to establish a comprehensive strategic partnership of cooperation between the two countries. Xi said China is willing to work out a new blueprint of cooperation with new government of Zimbabwe. This is Mnangagwa's first state visit outside Africa since taking office last November. Malaysia will allow 56 Rohingya refugees into the country on humanitarian ground. Malaysian authorities intercepted boat carrying the fleeing refugees today off the island of Langkawi. An international artificial intelligence talent training program was unveiled at Peking University at China's Ministry of Education as AI technology is growing in importance and becoming a key player in China. The training program is expected to benefit 500 teachers and about 5,000 students in the industry over the next 5 years. A squirrel who was heavily injured in a wild animal trap and lost both his front paws has been given a set of prosthetic wheels. Orthopedics at Istanbul's Aydın University designed the prosthetic wheels for Caramel and are waiting for the squirrel to adjust to the new device before passing on to the next phase. The Indian Information and Broadcasting Ministry withdrew its contentious press release on fake news after a directive from the Prime Minister's office. Previously, the release had directed that journalists who were found guilty of publishing fake news would lose their government accreditations. The Indian Defence Minister Sitharaman met her Russian counterpart General Sergei Shoigu. The two leaders discussed defense cooperation between Russia and India. Indian Defense Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is in Moscow to attend the 7th Moscow Conference on International Security. This is Ms. Sitharaman's first visit to Russia as India's defense minister. The families of 38 Indians killed by ISIS in Iraq will receive a compensation of ₹1 million each. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi made the announcement in the wake of a protest outside Parliament demanding financial support for the families. The trial run of the first container train between India and Bangladesh was flagged off from Kolkata city. The 60-container train can just reduce transit time, but also land and sea route constraints as well. And the Uttar Pradesh cabinet, headed by Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath, on Tuesday discussed a draft bill that aims to check arbitrary fee hikes imposed by private schools. The proposed bill will apply to all private schools charging ₹20,000 in fees annually, including the minority institutions. This rule is set to come into force from the academic sessions 2018 to 2019. Villagers in India's southern Coimbatore city staged a protest demanding a new place for living after their homes were demolished by the state government 7 months ago. Men and women with their belongings stood outside the district collector's office, claimed that the state government promised them new flats. However, step towards rehabilitation has been taken yet.